Don't stop now. Don't stop talking now just because 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, if I'm going to be abundantly honest, I want you to eat because
Oh, I'm
uh,
glad. I appreciate that.
the best version of you is after you have trained and after you have eaten. And so I don't want you when you haven't done either of those things. Like the best version of you is after a workout and fully fueled
I
that
agree.
I get access to. Those are the things I need from you to live our best life
Uh,
together.
I agree. Our best personal life and our best business life.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
Well, for those of you who've just stepped into the conversation, and that would be all of you, welcome to I Heard You When You Said, the podcast where you might learn some things, but you're guaranteed to laugh. And I am Justin, not a doctor, don't play one on the internet. I'm here with Stacy, who is well fed and also not a doctor, doesn't play one on the internet. And so who knows what kind of laughs you might get today.
I am well fed today. There was even bread involved today.
Oh, nice.
There's some avocado toast today with some everything seasoning. And no, I'm well fed today.
Well fed. Did you poop today already?
I have not pooped today already. I'm really sad about that. Like I've had coffee, I've gone for a walk, and I was hoping that that would help, and it didn't. It hasn't happened yet.
Did you take all your normal things that you take in the morning? All your gut health?
I didn't take that yet. I was hoping the coffee would work because I thought I was going to go lift, and I didn't lift. So I didn't want to put myself in a position where I took all the gut things and then was in the middle of a deadlift and then felt like I was going to grab myself. So I strategically moved that to midday.
Strategically.
Because, yeah. Have you ever been that a really heavy lift and you're just like, hope all that stays in there? It's never happened to you?
I mean, that's not never happened to me, but 9 times out of 10, I'm going to handle all that business before I start the working sets. That way I don't have that problem.
Well, your digestion is also better than mine. It's something we're working on. It's definitely the thing the internet wanted to know about, how my digestion is, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Well, what do we say? How do we approach what are the 3 main problems we solve for our female clients?
Poop, pregnancy, and parenting.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm really the poop still working on getting that more consistent. Pregnancy definitely eliminated that risk about, 18 years ago. Jonathan's 18. So been really successful at, avoiding that. But I have heard that because I had my tubes tied after Jonathan, that they can grow back together. And so don't think like not in the back of my mind that when we finally get the physique that I want, that I won't be like 51 and like have this miracle pregnancy after I got like the body that I wanted and be like, delightful. This is going to be really fun. So poop, pregnancy, and parenting. Parenting I'm pretty decent at. Got a few reps in, raised some good humans. But no, I hope that's not, I mean, we tease that I'm a unicorn. I'd like to not be that level of a unicorn.
You'd like to have some regularity to your journey, huh?
Well, yeah, but I mean, could you imagine experiencing that part of our friendship of you having to deal with me pregnant? Could you even imagine? I am not a happy pregnant person.
I can't imagine it. I can't even wrap my head around what that would even entail. I can't imagine it. I can't wrap my head around somebody who's 50 years old getting pregnant in the first place, much less you.
Let's hope that we don't have to test the levels of our friendship to see what that happens. Let's just think that, science is science and that's not, where I get to be a unicorn in life.
100%. So what are we talking about today?
Ooh, I love what we're talking about today. And it's taken us a little bit of time to get here, but I'm super thankful that we're here. What we're bringing to the world is this idea of taking a stand is not standing still. And it was something that I had heard about when you think you're going to take a stand for something. It's usually like you're going to hold your ground and be unmoved. And I thought, well, let's actually challenge that. Because when you are convinced or convicted or passionate about something, to see growth in it, you actually can't stand still. And so today, what we bring to the people is this concept that taking a stand isn't actually indeed standing still at all.
And when we talked about it, we were talking more specifically in our case about how we have the bias to not put ourselves in a corner, back ourselves into a corner, theoretically or dogmatically, not going out and saying things and then having somebody come back and be like, well, this, and this. And then be like, well, crap, we kind of said this and they're saying this, which could also be true. Right. And so we're a mental bind because of the fact that we're like, this actually really doesn't make sense and they're right. And so what we came to realize was, first of all, we were just being scared about taking a stand on anything. So like if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything type, situation. I'm sure most people have heard that saying before, but we also are willing to be wrong. Like we can say something and be like, but I could be wrong. Probably not, but I could be, that type of thing. And we laugh at that, but it's like, hey, I've done some preliminary, looking around, observation. I think this pretty strongly. Now, if you come to me with evidence of the contrary and we can have a conversation about it, which is a hard thing to do nowadays for some reason because people don't understand nuance, but to go, okay, I could be wrong. I see where you're coming from. And then move on and add that conversation, add that information to your perspective of whatever the thing is, right? Like if you think that, red meat is a bad thing, right? Or if you think red meat is a good thing, right? Having a conversation about what your stance on it is and then being willing to add the other person's perspective to your view and go, okay, I can see where you would think that. It might not necessarily change my opinion or change my stance on it, but I could see where you would think how you think, right? And so more specifically to our standpoint, the reason we started the company together is because we saw that there was less attention being paid to the impact of people's daily stressors on the health outcomes that they want. People were not giving enough credence to the things that they've been through or the things that they go through on a daily basis. It's become what we term as their dysfunctional normal to do those things. And then they're like, well, I've done every diet, nutrition, and health protocol that I have access to, and nothing seems to stick for too long. And regardless of the reason or the consistencies that you see in those journeys, we saw that there was an undervaluing of the mental aspect of the journey. Everybody talks about it, but nobody's really like gives credence to it. They're like, it's kind of like a redheaded stepchild of fitness and nutrition. It's like, we're going to really concentrate on programming, really concentrate on macros, and concentrate on sleep too, and that stress management stuff, you should do that as well. Right. It's like, okay, cool. What if we flipped it on its head? Right. Not to say that any of that is less important than the other, but what if we flipped it on its head and like, well, let's start with the stress management piece, because without that under control, your compliance is going to be pretty hard to get to where we want it to be. So that's what we're taking a stance on, right? We think that the stress and the daily actions that you take to mitigate that stress and figure out what your shitty coping mechanisms are and how to improve those, that's the thing that will affect your health more than you think it will.
So speaking on taking a stand, tomorrow, you don't know this yet, I'm releasing a reel. So by the time this episode comes out, the internet will have seen it, where it's probably the boldest stand that I've taken in what we do. And really the premise is it's this audio from Matthew McConaughey that says, I don't force anybody to work with me. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And go find something else. And really what I wrote in this was that this is an invitation that if you think that there is a better team that can support you in your goals, that I want you to go find it and do it confidently. Like there are other people out there that if you fully believe that they can support you in getting to your goals and what you want to do, then I want you to go do that confidently. But if you're not confident in that decision, it was an invitation to be really curious about what we do because it is so different and we curated it differently on purpose and not just on a whim. And the longer that we do this, I mean, I've been having this conversation for 10 years. We've been having this conversation together for a year and a half. That the more we see it and the more we watch lives transformed the way we do it, the more conviction I have about I'm actually willing to back myself in a corner and take a stand on here. And I want you, not that I'm inviting a fight, but I want you to tell me that I'm wrong so that we can have a conversation so that I can learn more, like you talked about earlier, to see your perspective, but also move you my way. Because this isn't about how we feel. This isn't about our feelings. This is about the science behind what we do. And this industry, from my perspective, is so based on manipulating people's feelings to get them to do something, to buy now, to do this quick fix, to the 30, 60, 90 days that culture has been accustomed to. Well, if you can't do this quickly, then it's not worth it. If you can't do it at this price point, then it must, or I want this for free. And we decided, actually, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. This is actually going to take you a year to 2 years. And we're going to tell you that at the front. Actually, this is quite a significant investment, and we're willing to bet that you've paid more money to solve this problem outside of the year or two that you work with us, that we are actually an inexpensive option compared to all the pain and expenses that you've carried. And now more willing and even just getting more reps in and doing it together, I'm like, I will take a stand on here, and I not only stand, but push this whole narrative forward is the industry's harming people. Mm-hmm. And so by the time people come to us, they're like, I've been beat up, broken. I've spent all this money and I still didn't get what I want. And I'm still stressed as hell. Why don't I have the physique that I want? And where we come in and go, yeah, you said it earlier. We're going to flip the whole industry on its head and do this reverse and actually give you everything that you want, but you haven't seen it done this way before. And I've heard you say it, that we're not the only ones doing this. There are other people doing this. They're just not doing it like this, not with the experience and expertise that we have bringing it together. But it was that condition of being quiet, so to speak, I can say from my perspective, because I got so much pushback in the industry that I wasn't as confident to take a stand previously. And I yelled pretty loud from the rooftops. But then after time, I was just like, I got a little bit more quiet and I didn't like that version of me and willing to bring it back.
I also think you were missing some things, right? There were some things that you were missing and you knew that. So you were less willing to be loud about it, right? We've had conversations about this before, right? Like, I know that there are some principles at play that people aren't paying attention to, but you weren't willing before now to adhere to the principles that other people were espousing, right?
Do you want to say more? You can.
Well, I mean, like we talk about it all the time. Like when you're talking about like pictures of you, teaching yoga however many years ago, right? You're like, I was so confident in the methods that I was teaching, right? But my body did not reflect any effort in that direction. And so it was, in some ways you knew, like in some ways subconsciously, you probably knew there was a hypocritical piece in there going like, I'm telling people to do this, yet I'm not doing this, right? Type of thing. And you just didn't know what you didn't know. You didn't have enough confidence to know. And it's the same way. It's why we're doing what we're doing now, is because we knew there were pieces that were missing to specific, which a lot of good foundational principles of fitness and nutrition, like if it's a solid, like you get a solid understanding, right? Protein and daily movement and sleep and things like that, that gets you a really long way, because most people just don't do the shit consistently. They know it and they don't do it. But there are certain populations and certain circumstances where the effectiveness of that runs out a little bit. Not to say that it's not part of the plan. It's just there's some other things that need to be considered right? When it comes to people who are impacted by trauma and how that affects their behavior, because behavior is the driver of all results, right? How do you actually behave in the real world? And so when you say, you know, I'm willing, or I'm willing to back myself into a corner, it's a little bit of a false statement. It's more of like, I'm willing for you to come to me with a conversation. Like you said, I'm not looking for somebody to argue with me, but I'm looking for somebody to ask me a question. Hey, this doesn't really make sense to me. Can you help me? Right? Can you help me understand? Or, maybe it is confrontational, because people usually don't come with like generally just ambiguous questions. It's usually like this, like, I don't believe this, you're wrong, that type of thing. And so we're just basing our understanding on our knowledge and experience. And yes, a lot of things are scientifically proven, and a lot of things are not. A lot of things are anecdotal. We've seen it work, right? We're practitioners. We go in and we do the things, and when the things work, we repeat the things, and when they stop working, we tweak them, right? I mean, that's a practitioner at work. Now, it's going to take a long time sometimes for data to catch up to that, because studies are expensive. They require a lot of adherence, right? They're not always in humans. And so sometimes that data doesn't translate, right? There's a lot of conversation goes around like that all the time. But what I'm trying to say here is, we are adding to knowledge and experience with conversations that don't agree with the way that we see things. That's my point. And so it's not about being right or wrong necessarily. It's about being willing to go like, wow, I didn't have that understanding before. Now I do. So how does that add to the information that I already know? There's something that I said a while back on an episode, I'm pretty sure, where we talked about like everybody has 10% of the answer.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, okay, well, I am not a vegan, but that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to listen to what they believe to be the truth about being a vegan, to say like, oh, there's probably something in there. There's probably a thread in there that I could apply to my practice, like how we get people further down the road, right? There's an aspect of that might be useful. So if you talk to this dietary group and this dietary group and this dietary group, even though they all believe diametrically opposed things, it doesn't mean that they don't have threads of common principles in there that you can take away.
I was thinking, just as you were talking, that I saw my own bias, even as we are talking about this, is that when I said, I'm willing to get backed into a corner, and you're like, that's not necessarily true. I was like, how interesting that, not now, but for the longest time, is I looked at everything as a fight, because it was. So even if you weren't fighting with me and just approached me, it was a fight. I needed to prove myself. I needed to convince you of my way, because I had fought for so long. And I was just on a phone call with a friend of ours earlier, before we recorded this. And he and I were talking about why we actually like each other. We don't have a super close relationship. We've known each other as colleagues, building a friendship. And I have such respect for this person. And in this conversation today, he's like, I've sat down and tried to journal and understand why you respect me at the level that you do. And it was really funny, because in the last couple of days, I was thinking the same thing. Like, why do I have such an affection and such a respect for this person when we've had such little interaction? And as we were talking today, he's like, I actually think I figured it out. So he and I were able to hash this out. He's like, when you came to us where we previously worked, and you were coaching in a method that we hadn't known about behavior and all of the things of trauma and all of the things you and I coach now, the stress management piece, he's like, it's not that I didn't believe you. I didn't understand you. And so everybody thought I was challenging you. And he said, I actually wasn't challenging you at all. I just needed you to explain it to me in a way that I understood.
Yep.
And so here we are, literally a year and a half later. And he's like, I not only understand what you were saying, but I learned from you. I'm continually learning from you, and I see it play out. At the time, though, because I had been so conditioned, or just it was the way that I had written my story, that I had thought for so long, that it appeared that I was being challenged. And so but I wasn't being challenged at all. He just wanted to understand better. And so as you were saying, like, well, hold on, it's not that you back yourself. That's not 100% true. It comes back to, okay, what was the story that I was telling myself? Because I was just reliving an old one. Like, so until today, as we're like 18 months in, going like, hey, what was it that made us so like think each other's cool?
Right.
I only knew how to fight. I'd only known how to prove my point because the industry was so non-accepting of it. To be like, okay, well, if I'm looking, whatever you're looking for, you are surely going to find. If you go into a bar and you're looking for a fight, you're going to find one.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into a situation looking to fail, be confident you're going to fail. And so, from your perspective, how do these old show up? Because it was a really personal conversation we had about this when we were even talking about this. This was a big realization for you and I in the stories that we were still previously living in our friendship and relationships, and how we're creating a new one. And getting to see that this morning with Eric was like, you weren't fighting me. He's like, no, I wasn't fighting you. I was just trying to understand you. And in a moment, I was like, maybe this whole time nobody was really fighting me. They were just trying to understand me. And I showed up with gloves being like, let's go. Okay, you don't need to nod your head that emphatically as a yes. Okay.
Yeah. And all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail. I mean, it's pretty simple. You know, if you see the world very unilaterally, if you see the world very one way, well, then that is not in your world is opposed to your world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. Right. And so it's like, nobody believes me, or nobody that I needed to believe me in one point in time believed me. So now I have to fight and keep fighting and keep fighting. And like you said, then eventually it just people who are somewhere in the middle, which are a lot of people, like they get washed into the, oh, they're against me category. And it's like, well, I'm not really against you. I just don't understand well enough to be with you. Right. It's like, I'm somewhere in no man's land. I don't have enough information to have an opinion. Right. And so I think there's a good realization from that conversation. And again, it's the conditioning that you find yourself in, that life serves you, right? Life is going to condition you one way or the other. And this is basically the whole reason that we put people through a coaching journey, is because if life is going to condition you, shouldn't you have heavy influence on the conditioning? Like, shouldn't you want to control the amount of results that you can? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to control everything that happens, but there are a lot of things that you can heavily influence and you can direct, right? You can put energy behind and focus on. And the things that hold you back are the conditions that you, like the condition that you previously had. I mean, you see this a lot with like domestic animals, right? They don't have like internal thoughts that they can just keep hidden and not behave like they behave the way that their brain operates. So if they've been beaten all their life, they behave like they've been beaten all their life, right? Like that's very outwardly easy to see. And so if you've had to fight all your life, you behave as if you've had to fight all your life. Now, humans can cover it up a little bit. They can kind of fake it till you make it in certain scenarios, even though their brain is telling them a different story. And so for me, this showed up as trying not to ever say anything that was wrong, right? I value knowledge and intelligence a lot. So, the last thing I wanted to do was make a statement on the internet where people are like, you're wrong, right? So I would say yes, because I was not willing to be going, that's not right. I don't believe that to be true. And that was just conditioning from life, I guess, right? Just conditioning from the way that I see the world. And not that I've like been wrong all my life, like got told I was wrong all my life or anything like that, but it was more about me trying to hold a standard of perfection. I don't know if that's even like the right word to use, the closest thing I can think, but a standard of like a perfect track record of making statements that make sense. But just knowing every once in a while you're going to make a statement that doesn't make sense to everybody. And then eventually you get to the point where you're like, hey, I'm actually going to make a statement that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but the people that it does make sense to are the people that I'm trying to attract. And I think that's where we're getting to here.
So I see that in you a lot. That disclaimer of like, hey, I'm not perfect, or hey, this isn't perfect, or hey, I'm going to make mistakes. And so in both of us, the conditioning was very different from just our past. And so as we talked about this, we were like, okay, well, what's our vision in writing a new story? So for those of you who are watching us or listening, either way, you're literally watching us create a new story in live time. Like this, the whole reason for the podcast is for you to see not only what's possible, because we're telling you it's possible, but you're watching us live it out. And this is why I love this medium, because it is the reality of who you and I are. This was a conversation between friends that were like, yeah, we're stuck in an old story, and we find it come up in a few different ways, relationally and professionally, of the reason we don't want to do things because that looks like an old story. And so as we were walking through this, for those who are still here, we're like, why do we do this? We've never experienced each other this way. This isn't even a challenge between us. We were actually, as we were creating a news story, looking over our shoulder behind us and finding a delay of like, hey, we actually can't move forward if we're looking back. So as we kind of move this forward, I think if there's anything we've done really well, is that we've taken a stand on what we know. And now that we're really willing to be more wrong, maybe me more so than you, not that you're not, I just think it's a bigger struggle for me than it is for you. You might say that it's different, is being really humble about, we know that we know that we know all of this, and we're going to give room for what we don't know, but we're still going to take a stand and move forward. Do you see it differently?
No, I think it shows up very similar for both of us, is as a combined entity, right? As Fortify Health Coaching, we're slow to speak and quick to change our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And changing your mind is not a bad thing. I think that's the thing that we're trying to get across in this conversation is changing your mind doesn't mean like, oh, I believed always. It can over time, but like I believed A and now I believe B. It's more like I believed A, now I believe A plus something and A
Mm-hmm.
plus plus something. Right? There's a lot. It's just additional information to your original stance. And over time, your original stance may completely shift and you don't realize it till you're 10 years down the road. You're like, man, I remember, what did you believe? I mean, it's 2024. What did you believe in 2004 to be true, 2014 to be true, right? And now in 2024, there's a lot of things like just about the world, about yourself, about your relationships, about whatever it is, right? Things that you believe to be true because you didn't have experience to on the contrary, or you were unwilling to, you were like blocking out all evidence of the contrary, right? You were like, oh, no, that's not true because I don't see it. If I don't look at it, then it's not real. It's not actually there. It's make believe, right? So yeah, I mean, I think being willing to be wrong is actually a little bit of a strong statement. We're just willing to pivot. We're just willing to continue to pivot. And I think about, obviously, I think in analogies and pictures, and you're talking about things that we are sensitive to that we've actually never done to each other, but it was something that we experienced in a previous relationship
Mm-hmm.
with other friends. It's like it's like, wearing a rain jacket in the desert. It's like, bro, you don't really need that protection here. Like it's not going to rain. But yeah. Well, where I come from, there's the thumbs up again. Where I come from, it rains all the time. Or other places I've been, I've gotten caught in the rain before.
Mm-hmm.
So I always wear this rain jacket just in case.
Just in case.
It's like, well, that probability that happens pretty low here in the desert. So I think you're okay. I think you can just take that jacket off, right? So
I love that. That's a great word picture of what we've done. We were just packing our rain jackets like everywhere we went. There's no sign of rain, not even a cloud in the sky. You're like, hey, we're good. You got your rain jacket? I got my rain jacket. Okay. We're good to go. At risk of being super sensy today, at risk of being super sensy, you are probably the best. I'm actually not even going to make it soft. The fact that we are here, You're one of the best things I've been wrong about.
What was your original opinion?
Isn't that a whole other podcast episode? You want me to say it again? I'll
Just
say
some
it
guy with
again.
a shirt off on the internet?
I was, what could I possibly learn from him? What does this young guy, shirtless on the internet, have to teach me? What could I possibly learn from him? And really, I'm so glad I was wrong. I'm not wrong very often. And that's not arrogant. That's just background. And I was wrong about you. And I'm so thankful that I was.
Mm. I'm
One of
glad you
my,
were. I'm glad you were too.
are you? Good to know.
It's worked out pretty well for me.
Yeah, I know. I know. I know. Sames. I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it.
To add to that point, because I think this is a good illustration, is I think you see it as you are wrong about me. I see it more as you just weren't completely right. You had threads that made sense, but you just weren't completely right. Like you had put me in a category like people you had seen before, and then once you got new information, you were willing to go, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense as opposed to the other people that I have in that category, right? So this is what my point is to other people's thing is like, you're not when we say we're willing to be wrong, we don't like being wrong. Like we thought the sky was green and it's actually blue, right? Like that's not the kind of wrong we're talking about. It's like we're willing to go, maybe I wasn't seeing the complete picture. I still trust my initial judgment, but maybe there's some things that I was willingly ignoring or didn't know how to see. And now we're coming around to a better, more complete picture, right? So maybe willing or maybe being wrong about something, we could shift that a little bit closer into just not completely right about it, right? You just didn't know what you didn't know at the time. And of course, your opinion may be much stronger than what you're letting on here. It's the same way that I felt about you. And of course, we've talked about this in previous episodes, so it's not like people who listen regularly don't know this, but the methods in which you practice and trying to get people to come to their own realizations and the connections between the things of the mind and the things of the body and all that kind of stuff. I was just ignorant to. I just didn't know about it. I thought I knew about it. I thought I knew that well enough to, have a conversation or make recommendations based on it. But then I was like, okay, well, a little weird, but I'm gonna take a step in that direction. And if I find it to be interesting, I'm gonna take another step in that direction. And so as time went on, right, we kept getting more and more information about each other. And I'm like, shit, this actually makes a lot of sense. And then eventually it was, wow, this makes a lot of sense together. And then now it's, how do we actually add more legs and give this more power and take this further into the world? So yeah, don't be afraid to add new information.
Well, I also think how different the story is from what does this CrossFit young shirtless guy on the internet have to offer me to now on the complete opposite. I'm like, could you guys please respect him for more than his body? He's really smart. Okay, could you just respect him a little more? Like, you guys listening, you know who you are. You know who you are. This is where I get protective and sensitive. Like, he's so much more than that. That the thing that I saw you as when we first met, I actually don't see you at all that way. And nothing has changed about you physically in that time. But my perception of you has changed as such that it doesn't cross my mind, which I think why it's funny that was the thing that I was wrong about. So one of the things that we had talked about, taking a stand doesn't mean standing still, is that really the challenging part of really carving your own path to get there. And you and I have joked about it with me individually before we were partnered together, of living on the bleeding edge, not the cutting edge. And for those of you who are new to this concept, the bleeding is not a clean cut. It's rough. It's the triage. It's the thing that you're doing just to carve the path and get to the next place. It's not sterile. It's not pretty. It actually takes more support to repair than a cutting edge. A cutting edge is beautiful. There's like a scalpel, it can be tied together. And that's the thing that everybody praises, because it's done so seamlessly that when you have vision and you are literally carving out your own path. And the way that I see it is somewhat of what we're doing is if we were in a bamboo forest with machetes, hacking what's left and right, just because we have a vision of where we want to go, and literally carving a path to get there so other people can follow us more seamlessly. It takes a lot of effort to move the obstacles out of the way and the path of the things that you just keep moving forward, that we don't look behind. And so in that is that our vision has been so clear now that, does it sound graphic to say we have machetes and we're cutting bamboo? I think we're more gentle in the way that we coach people, but it's just like a really good word picture of like, hey, we're just cutting this down and making a way so that it's possible. Now, once it's done, people are like, oh my gosh, that path is so clear. I love this path. It's traveled so often. But nobody was there when you just, were sweaty and dirty and chopping it down. So what do you say about vision and obstacles and the awareness it takes, one, to do what we're doing, but to bring people along with us as we're doing it?
I think it would tie it back to the beginning of our relationship, which was not being aware of what the other person did really well. Right. So it was just, we didn't know that this other person had a strong history of proof in their life that this thing works really well, right? This method, these beliefs, and that kind of stuff. And so to create that awareness is one of the main reasons people don't have vision and they can't see the way forward a lot of times, is that they just are not aware of what that looks like, mainly because their life is very fuzzy in the fact that they have other things weighing in on their opinion, which is really not their opinion at all, right? It's other people's opinion of, like, it's other people's perceived opinion. It is their lack of ability to be still with themselves, like their lack of the ability to hear themselves think, in other words, because life is like, life will sweep you away if you let it. And that just means, maybe it's family stuff, maybe it's work stuff, maybe it's, friend stuff, maybe it's personal stuff, all that added up into what becomes your quality of life clouds your vision for what you're going to do moving forward. And so one of the first things to create that awareness, because if you're going to take action on something, you first have to be aware of where it is you're trying to go, have an intention to get there, and then you can take action on that intention. But the first thing is to start to be more present with yourself. And this is going to get a little bit into probably territory where people are like, hell, they're going to talk about meditating. That would have been me, 2 years ago. Like, oh shit, meditation, huh? That's cool. When we say be present, well, all we really mean is, can you just take a thought that you have in your mind and put it on paper and look at it? Can you just flip it around in your mind a little bit? That's what I mean when I'm talking about being present. Being present doesn't mean being still and silent and without movement of some type, without activity. It means taking one concept and ruminating on that concept, marinating that concept in your mind and flipping it around and wrestling with it and writing it down and thinking about it. That is, to me, that's presence, because presence is the ability to come back to the same thing over and over and over again. Now, that would be more like meditation. To be present, you want that idea to be something that you're currently dealing with, not something that you were dealing with 10 years ago, right? That is an old story that you're playing in your mind, hoping that things change and hoping that you feel a different way about it, and it's not going to happen. Presence is, what does my life look like now? How do I take that awareness and flip it around? Wrestle with it. And so to create that awareness, it means you may have to write some shit down that's bothering you. You might have to go for a walk with no technology. Gasp, right? You might have to.
I love that you said it. I love that you went gasp
right.
instead of like, you're like, Gasp.
Yeah,
Carry on.
well, I mean, doesn't really come across very well for me. So people might think I'm hyperventilating. You know, you might have to go feel a little foolish and play something instead of being so serious like an adult all the time. This is parents who don't engage in play, right? Even though you have little kids that engage in play all the time, so you have a perfect example. But that's how you create more awareness around, okay, what is it that actually is important to me? Because I think a lot of times we get placed, our priorities get put in front of us, not we don't make our own priorities. Another thing that can deter you from creating that vision and that path is just not ever haven't seen it work. And so you're just afraid that you're going to fail. Uh, I had a question actually today on the Paired app that I didn't get around to answering yet, but it was
Okay,
like,
hold on. Tell people what the Parrot app is.
oh,
Because
okay,
you and I know what it is,
yeah,
but like the great people of the internet don't know what the Parrot app is.
yeah. So the app Paired is a app designed for couples where you and your partner are connected on the app and you answer about your relationship. It could be like games or questions or this or that or whatever. There's different categories on there, but you can't see the other person's answers until you've answered the question yourself. That's what makes it really intriguing, and it sparks conversations and thoughts that maybe wouldn't come up organically because, like I said, life happens and there's time and space for those things doesn't always make itself readily available. So that is what the Paired app is. It's spelled just like that, Paired. If you look it up now, the question was like, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And so, like, the example answer was like, own a bed and breakfast or something like that, right? I don't really know what the answer to that is for me right now, like here in this moment, but that's essentially the question that we're asking to gain the vision, right? Is if you knew that failure, if you took failure off the table, then what would you be able to, like, what would you go toward next? What would be your next move if failure wasn't an option? Then what would you do?
Is it something I'm pretty confident I know the answer to this because we are both here together who just started a business together. The fear of failure doesn't really, I don't consider that as a risk assessment that often. Does it occur to you? So when you're asking the question, like, I don't know that I could answer that right now, is that just because of who you and I are, I don't ever consider failure as an option. So if you were to ask me the same question, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And maybe it's overconfident or arrogant or just a belief in faith or my abilities, is that I don't think there's anything that if I really wanted it that I couldn't do. Like there's not one thing that if I wanted it, that failure was even on the table because that's not who I am. I mean, we've talked about how many times we stay too long, we care too much, we don't know how to quit.
Right.
So answering the question of what could you do if you knew you wouldn't fail, does it even occur to you that failure is an option?
No, I think the more appropriate answer or the more appropriate question would be like, what would you do if you didn't have to hurt to do it, right? If you didn't have to struggle to do it.
Ooh.
To me, that's a much better question for me personally because I'm not really afraid of failing so much as I'm afraid, not afraid of, but like not willing sometimes to lean into the things that hurt more than doing nothing, right? Or doing the opposite, right? So what would you do if you didn't hurt to do it? That's a much better question in my opinion, right? Would that be like running a marathon, right? I'm just something simple, physical. Maybe that's owning a multi-million-dollar business, right? Like there's a lot of struggle and hurt involved in that. Not to say that it's not worth it. That's up for that person to decide. But if you could take the struggle off the table, what would you do? Set that as the vision and then go from where I'm standing is, okay, I understand that that's unrealistic. I understand that there's not going to not be any struggle, but how can I do it even though that's the case? Am I making that clear?
100%. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with Jonathan last night. And we were sitting on the couch watching TV, and I looked at him. I'm like, dude, I'm going to miss you. Like, as we're leaving, like, this kid is my friend. I'm like, I'm going to miss you. He's like, me too, mom. I'm like, this sucks. Whose idea was this? Like, I hate this idea. And we were talking about the dynamic shift of the family. Like, I have 2 kids moving out. And so Ted and I haven't been alone with 2 children in 20 years. Like, what does this look like? And especially since I'm so close to this kid, in knowing, like, okay, that kid comes back to me. But Joshua moving out is very different. What do holidays look like? And so we were talking about Jonathan wanting to have kids when he's older, and he's like, "Yeah, we're not going to do it like you and Dad did, Mom. Like we're just going to get 3." And I showed him, like, 3 is a really good number. 3 was a really good number. And so I had showed him the picture that I had sent you the other day of me at 30 with 3 kids. Oh God, you're going to die at this. He's like, he looked at it. I said, "That's you as a baby." He's like, "I didn't know that Dad was rocking that ugly goatee for this long."
I love how
Okay.
that's the first thing that came out of his mouth.
I knew you would love it. I'm like, because you just are the one that's like, Jonathan is so savage in his comments. Here's the point of the story is that I said to him, I don't know if we made the right decision. Like, looking at the 3 of them, like these 3 precious boys, did we make the right decision in stepping into foster care and adoption and for how much it cost us? And he's like, "But Mom, look what you get to do now." I said, "Well, yeah, I took pain and I gave it a purpose. But if I had a choice, it's cost me more than I'm willing to pay. Like, I don't take off the table the impact that you and I have now because of my story. But as my kids, like, that was 15 years of their life. Like, I don't get back." Like, so when you're like, it's not failure. Well, I took a really shitty, well, and built a business for it. It's creating legacy and sovereignty and freedoms. What? I'm not complaining about it, but I took something that if I had known what the struggle was going to be, I would have said no. But we didn't fail. Just struggle wasn't, I would have done it different.
It's an interesting thing to think about too, because like you said, knowing that you took a purpose or took a pain and you turn it into your purpose, and you're really now shifting that into your family's prosperity, right? You're moving it into, we're actually going to show people that there is a better way to do this. You know, obviously I didn't live it, so I don't have an opinion about it, but you know, I for one am really glad you didn't do it any differently, because I don't think you would be as intentional about the things that you do and you say now had you not. Now, yes, it cost you. You picked up some baggage along the way that you're still working on handling. And I think that's going to be the case. Sorry. I think that's going to be the case no matter what the situation is. So you just choose the baggage you want to carry, because you're going to be carrying baggage no matter what you do, right? And if you want to live a life without purpose, then don't do anything that anybody disagrees with, right? Be still and silent and docile all your life. And so that brings us to the next point, which is the reason that people don't see the vision so clearly is because their intentions are so vanilla, like so lukewarm, that they don't get the support of other people because they can't even explain what they want to do, right? They're just like, they're kind of like I was early on. It's like, I don't want to be wrong about it. So I don't want to like tell people what I'm trying to do, right? Because what if they think it's weird, or what if I don't have their support? Like, okay, well, you're going to have to take that chance, because otherwise you're not going to be able to have a vision strong enough to push the effort forward, right? So yes, you didn't know what you were stepping into when you stepped into it yet, but once you were in it, you were like, okay, I see how the game is played. I'm going to go to become the best game player that there is. Even with things that I don't quote unquote control, I'm going to do my damnedest to influence them to the heaviest ability. Now, along the way, you picked up some habits that weren't so helpful after the fact. They were very helpful in the fact, right? So you took the pain, you turned it into purpose, and there were some things that, there's some mixtures that come along with that go, I can use this. Like, I see where this is a good thing to have, but it's not a good thing to have all the time, right? It's a good attribute to have, but it's not a way to be to everybody everywhere all the time. And so that's where you took the intentions of the family that you wanted to, the family that you had, and trying to serve kids that didn't have that family, right? Because your intentions were different 15 years ago, right? And you can look back on that and like, I don't know if that girl made the right decision or that, that couple made the right decision. It's like, well, okay, you can't change anything about the decision that you made, but you can change maybe other people's decision, or you can help them make a better decision and put the purpose into their life a little bit better. And so that's why we're here. And so that goes back to, if you're trying to create a stronger intention, you need to start speaking to yourself as that person, right? I am the type of person who lives a healthy lifestyle. I'm the type of person who finds money wherever I go, right? Like if you think you have kind of you have a low prosperity mindset, right? I'm the type of person who, as you've said before, loses weight with ease, because you had that story of, well, this is all I've known for the last X number of years. And so I've got to work on creating a different story. And it's exactly the kind of thing that we help our clients do too, is just creating a different story. So you can't have a lukewarm intention if you have things that you're trying to create for the long term, right? If it's just a 30-day thing or a temporary thing, like, yeah, you can probably get by with some, 6 out of 10 effort level intention. But if you really want to create something, you've got to be able to evangelize it more and more as you go along. And again, it doesn't mean that the message stays the same. It just means your intention with the message, because we can point to 5 different people right now on the internet who are super strong at spreading their message. And we know that it is not a helpful thing to spread, right? We know that in fact, there's very little information in the message that actually makes sense, right? But they believe it with all their heart. And so it's not about the person who's right or wrong. It's about the person who has the hottest intention. I don't know how you say that. The loudest voice to some degree.
Also, going back to the beginning of why we weren't loud. I remember when you said, when we were talking about passion, you're like, if you yell all the time, people stop listening. And so it's this nuance of bringing people close enough to us and earning their trust and knowing us on a level that, like, if they're going to get passionate about something, which is different than excited, because, I love the description of us of, you are chill and I am no chill. One of us is going to get excited about a lot of things. The other ones will be like, okay. I was excited there was peaches on my peach tree this morning. Did I almost send you that picture? Almost, because I was excited about it. I'm like, is he going to care about peaches on my peach tree? Probably not. So I just kept it to myself. But I was excited about it. Is that the difference between, just because somebody says something loudly repeatedly doesn't make it true, and that it doesn't have integrity. So as we're creating a new story, you're watching us intentionally balance this nuance of what we get passionate and excited about, that we have so much conviction over, tempered with the discipline of how we communicate it, because we don't want to be sensational. We don't want to be tantalizing. We don't want to stimulate your senses. We want to equip you to think about how you think, and then have both the mind, body, and physique and life that you want. And when we get to do that, that's not sexy. That's not sexy at all. That's not even the thing that is the most sellable, quote to speak. It's actually and mundane and so in the things that is, people are watching us live this out loud, you get to watch us temper what's unsexy and still bring it with conviction, because we care about so much about what we do, not in a lukewarm way at all. And so you've watched us commit to something, like, wholeheartedly. I don't know how we really could commit any more than we have. I mean, the next move is my move there. And I'm not sure if there's anything more committed into watching something grow. Then I don't even see that as a risk now. I just see that as the next right move of committing to it, making the call, moving the direction, as we develop the tools that we need to do this better together. Because if there's one thing we've seen, is distance is a hindrance. Time zones are a hindrance. So as we wrap this, how do we hand that off to, yes, you're watching us do this. We are living it out loud, sometimes imperfectly. We've packed our rain jackets. We are no longer carrying them with us anywhere we go. And we're taking action. What else do we have?
I mean, I don't think we've had a podcast yet that to some degree the subject doesn't come back to our original model of awareness, intention, and action. That's what we've in several points have said here. You're going to have to find a way to create awareness in your life. That means slowing down, writing something down, creating a routine, creating a way where you can kind of dive into the things that you know you're thinking about, but you can't quite. It's like it's a TV channel you're watching that you can almost see what's behind the static, right? Well, how do you clear the static? Well, you got to go straighten the antennas up a little bit, right? So go find a way to straighten your antennas up, and that's going to look different for everybody, but it's going to take some aspect of mindfulness. So there's where you start to create the awareness about what you really want, not what other people want for you or what the world tells you that you should want. Then next, you got to create an intention around that thing. Okay, I don't know where to start. All right, we'll start with the simplest thing that you can think of, right? I don't know where to start getting healthy. Okay, what can you think of that a healthy person does? They probably drink water. Cool, let's start drinking more water, right? They probably go on a walk. All right, cool, let's start going on a walk. And so that's where you start to create some real intention around the fact that you want to be a different person. And that is going to come with little things like, I am the type of person whose statements, we work on this all the time with clients, right? I'm the type of person who goes on a walk every day, right? Even if it's not the truth yet, you're telling yourself that you're that type of person. Along the way, you're going to get scared. You're going to be like, you're going to feel imposter syndrome. You're going to be afraid that you're going to fail being perfect at it. And again, that's not the point. Perfection is not the point. But you may need to do it scared. You may need to do it sad. You may need to do it mad. Do it anyway, right? We talked about fear setting before. If you don't know what that is, just Google fear setting Tim Ferriss and you'll find all you want to know about it. And then like Stacy said, you got to commit to it. You got to be willing to be wrong and just commit to the thing that you're doing. Because I can guarantee you that nobody's probably going to call you out. If you're committed enough, very few people are going to, they're either going to move out of the way or they're going to start following you, right? Now it's up to you to do your due diligence on the thing that you're committed to, right? You don't want to commit to something that you know to be, even after you found it to be not completely true, right? You got to be willing to adjust your stance on things. But man, this is, Stacy and I on our podcast and in our mediums and everything that we do is going, hey, we're committed to telling you that stress is running your life more than you think it is. And this looks a whole lot different than what you think it does. Like people think of stress as like the shit they went through in their workday when they come home. Like, yeah, that's an aspect of it, but we're talking about things that you don't even realize are contributing to how your body responds to stress. Because it's not just mental stress, because that's an aspect of it, but it's what is your body carrying around that you don't even realize that it's carrying around. And this goes in, again, this is why we have so many different aspects of our coaching practice, right? It goes into things that are a little bit more esoteric, things that are very physical, things that are very practical. And so we're committed to saying, we are committing to being your stress management experts. Now, we can't do that for you, but you come to us, you tell us what you're dealing with, and we'll tell you, hey, these are the things that we need to be concentrating on right now, and let's start moving in that direction. And before you know it, you're like, holy shit, that makes so much sense, right? It didn't make sense to me when I first said it. Now it makes more sense. And so we'll also tell you, hey, when you start to feel better, you're going to try to fall back into the old patterns. You're going to be like, oh, this feels really good. Better stop doing it. It makes no sense. Like logically makes no sense. But in your head, you're going, yep, I'm fixed. Back stressing about bills again, right? It's like, hold on. It's all this work to get to point B. Let's not just go back flipping back to A just because we're excited about being at B, right? So we'll start to together. This is why we tell people that it's going to take a minimum of a year, probably 18 months, because old habits die hard, right? Mm-hmm. And so just remember that. So this is our formula to say, hey, it's time for you to take a stand on your life, not take a stand on your political point of view or that you believe meat is good or bad or whatever, right? It's you taking a stand internally. You don't have to tell anybody else about whatever you're doing, right? Now, committing to something, you're probably going to have to ask for help along the way. And if you need our help, you know where to find us, right? If you need somebody else's help, well, then I hope you know where to find them. But the point is, you're going to start to take a stand about what it is that you want to do with your life. And that doesn't include doing something one time. It includes continuing to do things and moving the way that you do things along the way. And like Stacy said with her story is, you're going to turn your pain wherever you were standing, wherever you were currently drowning, into some type of purpose, because somebody's going to look at that and go like, holy crap, that's awesome. And you're going to create some type of purpose or some type of understanding for someone else. And if no one else, if you do it for no one else but one other person who's like, who reaches out to you on the internet or in person or whatever it is like, whatever you're doing, I want some of that, right? Whatever drugs you're taking, I want some of that. Whatever you're smoking, hand me some of that, right? And this is where we joke about being like high on life, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I'm high on life right now. It's like, you know what, man? I just got really clear on where I wanted to go, and I started running in that direction. You know, willing to trip and fall every now and again, but I'm running in that direction. So that's what we're here to say today.
I love it. And I love that we get to say it together. So I'd back myself into a corner for what we're doing today.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a lot of kickback on that.
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
Just be careful if you back Stacey into a corner. She has a really big sword, so you back her into a corner. She's gonna whip that sword out. You're gonna be sorry that you did. That's what comes with 15 years of foster parent trauma and all that good stuff. So,
my God, so many things I want to say right now, and I'm not gonna say any of them.
Watch the sword. Just watch the sword. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not gonna say any of them.
As always, if you want to find us, you know where that is. Links to our socials in the description of this episode, our landing page, if you want to get involved with any of the stuff that we're doing. And even if you just want to stop by and say, hey, you guys are idiots and I love it, that's exactly the type of feedback we're looking for. So until next time, I am Justin, and this is Stacy with the Sword, and we'll see you next week.